Hello, Eliza. Hello, Josh. This is for you. Spirits, dead, I honor you. You know, we as human beings, we're born with certain fears in our DNA. Fears that allow us to survive as animals, as beings. But we start adding on to these fears, creating a kind of fear body at a very young age. You know, we start out being afraid of things like monsters in the closet. And it might seem childish or illogical, but it's that fear of what is on the other side of what I don't know. The fear that there is something there that is a threat to me. This doesn't exactly change when we get older. When we get older, we start having fears about things that based on our experiences. We have more experiences when we're older, so we start having fears based on not having enough money, not our family not being secure enough, getting sick. Things that are more realistic but pop up in response to our experiences. From a very young age and then forward, we start kind of adding all these layers to this fear body around our psyche, without really thinking about fear as the problem in and of itself. Concern for things is good, but fear, beyond the very basic fears that we have in order to continue our existence, we start fearing and worrying too much about more and more things. They multiply as we get older. Then what happens is that all of these fears that we're kind of layering, creating this fear body, they fill up so much of what is in our mind and our psyche and in who we are. They take up so much space, to where our mind is just constantly focused and worrying and fearful about all the small things that you have to worry about. Like, oh, am I going to be on time? I got to eat real quickly to get over my break? Anything like that. They take up so much of who we are that we become identified with them. We become attached to them because we feel like that's us. I don't think that we're as afraid of death as most people think we are. I think that it's something else. I think that these fears start to take up so much space that they start to feel like us. And when we imagine not all of these things not being a problem anymore, it's such a different kind of existence that we're afraid of that. And we're so attached to our fears and aligning them, thinking that they are us because they take up so much space. We subconsciously think that they are us, that to see an end of that is to feel like there's an end of us, because they take up so much space, our fears do. And it's always good to find rest between fears, because if we're going from one worry to another, one fear to another, one concern to another, we have to find a way to rest in between, to either feel who we are, or to not think, or to simply be. We have to find a way to find rest in between these gasps, as it were. And, you know, it's natural to, it's only natural, it's only human to have all of these fears and to unfortunately be identified with them. Part of the spiritual process is holding everything in a grander perspective and being able to feel what you are deep down, because if you feel what you are deep down, your soul, then all the concerns that are in the fear body that wrap around that soul, you start to see them as ephemeral, as not mattering as much as you thought that they did. And you know, when you ask spiritual masters like Sadhguru or other spiritual masters about, you know, what happens after death, because we kind of want a continuation of us, right? And there is, but the reason why they don't really want to, a lot of spiritual masters don't want to tell you exactly what happens after death or what death is like, is because they're trying to get you to not focus on that monster in the closet, on that ending of your fear. We're so attached to fear that we think that it's us, that we feel like we'll end if our fear ends, subconsciously. And we're so afraid of that monster in the closet still that we don't realize it's not the monster in the closet that we need to be afraid of, it's the fear itself. That's why spiritual masters try to get us to calm down, to breathe, to try to understand ourselves, and to understand things in a grander perspective, and understand that we are something more than what we're attached to right now. Being able to set down fears, or to find peace or rest in between fears, in between worries, in between this continuum of thoughts in the mind, is so important. Because think about it, we're more advanced now. Humanity has moved forward for most of us, in the United States. Life is much better than it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Much, much better. We have access to amenities that only kings and queens had access to hundreds of years ago. Talking about like regular baths, a much more sanitary toilet environment, books, time to reflect, entertainment at the drop of a hat, where only kings and queens had that. Yet, we don't feel happier. We don't seem happier, and we have a suicide epidemic in the United States, and honestly, around the globe. In more developed countries, actually. God, I hate planes. I feel like a DJ that's got to stop and start when these planes, so many planes. Anyway, so this epidemic is because now that we have more time to sit down and think and reflect upon things, the way that we have been operating as human beings, and culturally, the way we've been operating mentally as human beings, it's not satisfying. And we're realizing that even when we don't have as many things to worry about as when it comes to survival, the worries just multiply regardless. And our experience of life is painful. We become older sooner. We become more tired. And we might live longer lives, but that doesn't mean that they're happier lives. When we take away the necessary fears of survival, and we start to focus on all the other little fears, there's a part of us that knows that this isn't what we're supposed to focus on. This isn't who we are. And then that makes us sad, but we don't realize why we're sad. We don't realize that, making just, having a little bit more food, or being perceived a little bit better at work by our colleagues or higher ups, or saying just the right things in conversations and not being weird or not being awkward, that these things, they can blow up in our heads and they can feel so much bigger than they are. And if I didn't name something that you worry about, there's probably plenty of worries that you can think of. They've become as intrinsic as survival fears, because we don't know how to stop fearing. We don't know how to stop worrying. We don't know how to have rest between fears. And the greater rest and feeling of self and being in between fears, eventually the fears become isolated and they become little blips instead of our constant experience. If we can learn how to rest between fears and feel ourselves and be, then eventually most of our life will be spaces like this of presence, rather than tumultuous fears constantly. Starts out with finding ways to rest in between fears, to be yourself, to just be between worries, between fears. And however you can do that, do that. I've recommended many things in the past. Find a way to rest, whatever you do, between fears. So this is somewhat of a rarity. I'll end today, this short video, with a reflective poem that I wrote here in the graveyard. It's kind of a poem, it's kind of a reflection at the same time. Who knows the scent of a fabric rose? What looks like life may not be. Gazing into a closet darkly is the body of abyss, not the void upon which we gaze. Between fears, find a place to rest, even if you cannot relinquish the burden completely. Hope and courage are arrows blazing into the pitch-covered idol of regret. Know your weapons, and you will know yourself. Know yourself, and all enemies are obliterated in an instant. In their place stands God. Thank you very much, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day.